We are gathered here today on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. It is covered by Treaty 13, the Toronto Purchase. Please take a moment to consider the importance of the Indigenous lands and waters that feed our bodies and souls.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us here tonight for this special program on the eve of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. My name is Michael Levitt, and I'm the President and CEO of the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center. On behalf of FSWC, our chair, Fred Wax, who's with us here, and our esteemed partners for this evening's event, the UJA's Holocaust Education Center and the Azrieli Foundation, I'm honored to welcome all of you. I want to extend an especially warm welcome and thank you to our beloved Holocaust survivors who are here with us tonight. Survivors have always been central to the commemoration of this darkest chapter of our past. When they recount their harrowing, heart-wrenching experiences, it's not so much a history lesson as a gripping personal testimony, illustrating what can happen when a society forsakes basic human values and allows hate to go unchecked. In addition to being such a poignant living link to the Holocaust, the strength, resilience, and positive attitude survivors showed in rebuilding their lives after the war will forever be a source of inspiration to all of us. Sadly, each year as we mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day, there are fewer survivors among us. Just in the past few weeks, our Toronto community has lost several survivors, including Gerda Freiberg, Martin Baranek, and Georgette Lash, all of whom played such an important role in Holocaust education. That's without mentioning others who've passed in this last year, including Max Eisen, who showed such fortitude in sharing testimony of his horrific experiences in Nazi-occupied Europe during World War II. Today, in upholding the Never Again pledge, we must listen to those survivors still among us to help ensure that the nightmare they lived through will never, ever be forgotten. As the late Holocaust survivor, author, and Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel so wisely said, anyone who listens to a witness becomes a witness. It's up to everyone who listens to continue to share these stories, to remind all of us to be vigilant so as to never let them happen again, not only to Jews, but to any community. Survivors are at the heart of our program this evening, as you'll hear and see shortly when Pinchas Gutter and Andy Retty each speak. In a few minutes, we'll also be presenting the premiere screening of the Legacy Portrait Project, a short documentary film that I'm sure you will find extremely moving. It captures the unique relationship that exists between survivors and their children and grandchildren. The film grew out of an initiative our organization launched last year, which involved taking photo portraits of survivors and their families. The Jewish community in Canada is blessed to have a number of organizations who do such important work in the field of Holocaust education, honoring survivors, and preserving the memory of those who perished. Like FSWC, the Azrieli Foundation, and UJA's Holocaust Education Center play a vital role in this field, and we're honored to have them as partners for this evening's special event. As I've often said, as a community, we're stronger together, and tonight is testament to just that. We're also stronger thanks to the ongoing support of so many public figures from across the political spectrum, including a number who are with us here this evening. I want to thank Member of Parliament Yara Sachs, Member of Ontario Provincial Parliament Laura Smith, and Toronto City Councillor for Ward 6 James Pasternak for joining us here this evening. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Toronto's newly installed Police Chief Myron Demkiw. In recent months, I've had the pleasure of working with Chief Demkiw, and I can tell you that I've seen firsthand his firm commitment to fighting anti-Semitism and other forms of hate in our city. Chief Demkiw, thank you for joining us this evening. It's now my great pleasure to introduce His Worship Toronto Mayor John Tory, who has always shown himself to be a true friend and ally of our community. I want to mention in particular Mayor Tory's commitment to fighting rising anti-Semitism in our city, which he demonstrated yet again this past fall with his leadership on the Toronto for All campaign to combat anti-Semitism. Thank you, Mayor Tory, for your long-standing friendship and support of our community, which is reflected in your presence here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I present you Mayor John Tory.
Well, good evening, one and all, and I will just say to you that I feel the same way about Michael, and I'll tell you why, because it's important for me as mayor. It's very hard to keep in touch with what's going on in a city of 3 million people day in and day out. And the first person that I will hear from when it comes to things that I need to know, I'm going to talk just at the end of my very brief remarks. When I say that it's important for me as the elected leader of the city to, as I say, stand up, speak up, show up, and act when it comes to any kinds of acts of hatred and discrimination and many other things that you come upon in helping to lead a big city. And Michael makes sure that I know the things I need to know so that I can stand up and speak up and show up and act. And I'm deeply grateful for that, and it reflects so well on him as a person. He was the same way as an MP, and now Simon Wiesenthal is so lucky to have him as their leader. And I will add to that, just so you know, how lucky I will tell you we are to have Myron Demkiw as our new police chief. I had the privilege of being on the selection committee, and no disrespect to anybody else who applied, but it was just a choice that was the obvious choice, the right choice. We're dealing here with a man of immense professional experience in every aspect of policing, a person of obvious and complete integrity, and I should tell you, very importantly in the context of our visit here together tonight, someone who is deeply committed to respect for human rights, to respect for people, to making sure we respect each other, because he understands, I can tell you, how fundamental that is to the success of this particular city, being as diverse as it is. And so I will just tell you that as you get to know him better in this job, and he's had a pretty rude awakening coming in with some of the things we've got going on, but you know what? I feel good every day when I wake up and every night when I go to sleep that we've got the right person there to handle some of the challenges that we're facing today. And so we're lucky to have him. And one more person I'll say we're lucky to have, and this is no disrespect to all of my friends from public life who are here, but my colleague, Councillor James Pasternak. I have relied on James so much for many things. He's a chair of one of the most important committees at City Hall, but also he is a touchstone for me, with the Jewish community, because while I try to keep very good relations and close relations with a lot of people like Michael, my job entails keeping good relations with many, many different communities across the city. It's just the nature of the responsibility. And James makes sure that I never forget and that I know things I need to know, just like Michael does. So I'm very grateful that he's here as well. I'm not going to speak for long. I've already taken up my time paying tribute to these other people, which I think is the right thing for me to do, especially someone like the chief you don't yet know very well. But I want to thank Simon Wiesenthal and the other organizations that are involved for doing something that is fundamental to the success of this city, and is fundamental more so than ever in this day and age of such polarization and such division and such ease, where people seem to slip into things they wouldn't even say. Oh no, it's not really discriminatory, it's not really polarizing, and yet it is. We know what's going on. And these organizations like Simon Wiesenthal make all the effort in the world to make sure we continue to embrace each other and learn from each other and learn about each other, which is so fundamental in a city like this. And Michael has championed this. Dara and Pinchas have done some incredible work educating Canadians on the horrors of the Holocaust. And of course, it's based on the notion that we would take every step we need to take to make sure that never again is a reality. And I'll just tell you that on this day, I worry about something a little bit different. Because even as I attend an event like this, and we've all frequently and passionately said together, never again, I worry, and I forgot at the beginning to pay the ultimate and first tribute to the survivors who are here tonight, as Michael did in his remarks. I worry about the problem that exists when you never knew something, because you can never pledge to say you'll never forget if you never knew something. And the education that we're going to have to do to an even more intensive degree going forward is something that is going to be a challenge for us, but I think it is an absolute necessity, because, you know, if you've pledged to never forget something, you have to know it to begin with. And I'm worried there are so many people that don't know anything about the Holocaust that we're here commemorating tonight, and it's important that they should and understand not just the Holocaust itself, but the intergenerational trauma that it has caused for so many families, so many that are sent in front of us here. And you know, people have done well. I don't suffer from any intergenerational trauma. I've had a privileged life, but I know many people who have, whether they be refugees who came or people of a given faith that experienced this. And I think it's an important thing for us to understand in this city too, because when more than half the people that live here were born outside of the country, and many, many of those came here as survivors or as refugees, it's important to understand their context within which they view life and the circumstances they've endured all the way along. And so while we mark the celebration of the extermination or the liberation of the extermination camps, we still see the toll that is being taken by anti-Semitism today. And I told you the approach that I take, which is very simple. Stand up, speak up, show up, and act anytime. And Michael will tell you, if there's the smallest bit of graffiti that's written on the wall of a synagogue or written on a sign in front of a synagogue, I show up, because I think it is important when those little things happen to say you're here, to say this is wrong, we're not going to accept this, and to make sure we educate people by doing that. And that's at the very heart of what this organization and events like this stand for. And if we let our guard down for a minute in that regard, then that is going to be really just playing into the hands of those who would divide us and polarize us, and all of our communities are going to be worse off. And so I just want to say thank you again for putting on this event. Thank you for inviting me, and to say that I won't be letting my guard down. I'm an ally. I will continue to be an ally because it is right, but also because it is fundamental to the success of this city that is still and will be one of the most blessed places to live in the entire world. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dara Solomon, Executive Director of the Toronto Holocaust Museum.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening, and we're delighted to be partnering with Friends of Simon Wiesenthal on the special International Holocaust Remembrance Day program. Thank you to Michael for putting together such a special evening. For over 10 years, the Holocaust Education Center, soon to be the Toronto Holocaust Museum, has been programming around this UN-designated day of commemoration, and we're grateful for the support of the Yakubovich family who support our programs on this day. As you saw from the trailer, the Toronto Holocaust Museum opens on June 9th, and it's just upstairs on the second floor of this building, the Chef Family Building. Construction is wrapping up on the architectural fit-out, and next will start exhibition installation. This project would not be possible without the support of the Azrieli Foundation. The thread that runs through the experience of the Toronto Holocaust Museum is survivor testimony. There are 11 testimony kiosks, which you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, with hundreds and hundreds of minutes of survivor testimony. In our Life in Canada gallery, we share the post-war experience to honor the advocacy and commitment to Holocaust remembrance and education that our survivors planted in this community over 40 years ago and will continue long after they're gone. You can see that from the next slide that this museum is for everybody. We will make every effort to make this the most welcoming space for Holocaust education, remembrance, as a space where we can connect the dots from the past to the present moment. We anticipate thousands of students, community groups, and the general public. And one of the most beautiful things about this museum is that we've recognized that we have many different audiences. So a student from Scarborough who knows nothing about the Holocaust to, of course, our descendant community who grew up with these narratives. So it's very customizable through technology, and these layers are built into the experience. It's an immersive environment. So in addition to testimony, there are interactive maps, a tablet tool, which you can see on this slide, that offers specialized curated programs depending on the group. And these will be selected with our team to make sure everybody's experience is the right fit. We also know, like the mayor and Michael said tonight, that teaching the Holocaust for the sake of history is important, but it's not the only reason that we teach the Holocaust and the lessons of the Holocaust. We must connect those dots from the past to the present moment, and we'll do this in our Eckstein Family Learning Lab, where we'll do customized workshops that draw on current events and things that are happening around us so we can make sure that it's a very relevant experience and students leave feeling empowered to make a difference in their own neighborhood and their own community. So I really look forward to welcoming you all back in June when we open the Toronto Holocaust Museum. And now it's my greatest pleasure to introduce Pinchas Gooder, our dear friend, Holocaust survivor, a council member of our Toronto Holocaust Museum. Pinchas.
I'm getting a little bit, zerchischt here. With all this, with my hearing aids and my masks and all that geschäft. But anyway, good evening, everyone. It is really a very important evening. And what reminds me of this evening is not so long ago in the shul, we read about Jacob. Jacob asked his children to bring the grandchildren. He blessed them, but our commentaries say that he didn't only bless them, he also told them that they must continue to tell the story of what happened to the Israelites before, and that continuing that story is very important. And I would like to quote the great Hasidic sage, the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov who, we know created Hasidism around about 1760, and he said the following, and I'm quoting, "Remembrance is the secret of redemption. Forgetting leads to exile," the Baal Shem Tov, Zechrono Tzedek Livracha. Now, the way I remember quite often, well, once I started speaking publicly, that I was thinking, what is going to happen in the future with this, are we going to leave it to academics only to go and tell the story? How are we going to continue this? And then I was approached by Stephen Smith from the Shoah Foundation to start doing the Dimensions in Testimony. So from the Dimensions in Testimony became the last goodbye, which was a virtual reality. And so with the new technology, with the new IT and everything else, I think it's going to continue, and the interaction between a person, regardless if he is, an avatar, is terribly important. and to have our grandchildren, our loving grandchildren, to be able to continue to tell the story is even much more important. And I just feel so happy that I was able to have this interaction together with my grandson, my lovely grandson Daniel, who is going to continue to tell my story. He's already arranged to be able to have some photos and other things taken together with us, and then he's going to continue going to schools and others, so forth and so on. And I think that is the most important thing. I think that the idea of the legacy portrait, came out of a desire to document the relationship between Holocaust survivors and their grandchildren. It's clear it's the third generation that will be responsible for telling our stories and the stories of their grandparents and whatever happened. And I think that with this, I would love you and leave you to watch this film now. So please look at the screen and watch the film, and that will tell you the whole story. Thank you very much.
I did it, and yet I spent hours working on it, and I still cry every time I watch it. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Naomi Parnas. I'm your moderator for tonight's really unique panel. I was the producer and interviewer for the Legacy Project, the amazing mini-film you just watched. I'm also the co-founder of KPW Communications and a former reporter for CTV News Toronto. But for me, the most important reason that I'm here tonight, and I'm hoping not to cry, is as the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. We actually lost both my grandparents last year within months of each other. My Zadie was 104, my Bubby was 96. They were married 75 years. The mayor was so gracious and gave them both a certificate for their 70th wedding anniversary, which he said was the first he'd ever given, and their 75th, which was remarkable. I'm wearing my Bubby's pearls for the first time tonight in honor of her. So, both of them were in a labor camp in Siberia, but lost almost their entire family in Majdanek and Treblinka. That's why it's an extreme honor to be here tonight with all of you on the eve of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. I am extremely proud that while my grandparents were alive, they saw me do the work to continue their own legacy, which is why I was so proud and honored to be involved in the Legacy Project. All of us who took part in this project have been involved in Holocaust education for years, but as you could see, this was very different. This was really the first project where we had a dialogue between survivors and their grandchildren about what it means to be the ones to carry on that legacy. And we talked about intergenerational trauma. It is real, it exists, I have it. Many of the people on the panel will tell you that they have it, and you can see in the video. It really was incredible to have a discussion with them, and we're going to talk about this on the panel, but to really see how it affects the generations to come. It was a heartwarming and heart-wrenching experience at the same time, which we're going to delve into more, which is why I'm so honored to introduce you to this incredible panel of guests to talk more about this project and what it was like to be part of it. You've already met Pinchas Guter tonight. Pinchas is a survivor of 6 concentration camps. He was born in Lodz and was 8 years old when the war started. He is an avid Holocaust educator and speaker, and as he mentioned, he was the first survivor to be filmed for Steven Spielberg's Shoah Foundation's Dimensions in Testimony, which really will be the future, in some ways, of Holocaust education. He is joined tonight by his grandson, Dan Guter, who you met in the film. We are also honored to have Andy Reddy with us tonight. Andy is a child survivor of the Holocaust, born in 1942 in Rechnitz, Austria. He was only 2 years old when his mother and grandmother were forced out of their home in Hungary and into a Jewish ghetto. And he was in the film with his granddaughters, as you saw, his wonderful granddaughters. Rounding off the panel is the amazing Matthew Schoikit. Matt directed the Legacy Project, and we worked together to do the filming, interviews, and edit the film together. Matt is also the director of The Accountant of Auschwitz, which won numerous awards, including 4 Canadian Screen Awards. So I'd like to welcome everyone on our panel tonight. I can project. Okay, so I want to start with Pinchas and Andy. We are so honored to have you here with us tonight. You don't need to turn it on, Pinchas. They'll turn it on for you. It's okay. They'll turn it on for you. Tell us what it was like to be part of this project, Pinchas.
It was quite incredible. I mean, I didn't, when I was talking a few minutes ago, I didn't really explain exactly how I felt, because I always remember everything that happened before the war and during the war, until, my father was a very humble person, but during the war he became a hero. He became a giant, because he kept us safe until the third week of the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. We're coming to the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto. I was there at the 60th when I was invited by the Polish government. And, to be able to transmit your history to your grandson, and he should continue telling the story over and over again. Look, we are coming to Passover. Passover happened over, thousands of years ago. And yet we tell the story over and over and over again. We read every week the Parsha in the Torah. Why do we do that? We do that because we want to assure that our identity, our history, and our, what we all about, what human beings are. Today, when I look what is happening today, it really breaks my heart. And yet, I'm an optimist. I believe that the world is getting better. Why do I believe that? Because in 1930, when the Jews were suffering under the Nazi yoke, in Evian, there was the conference of something like 30 nations to decide what are they going to do with all these refugees that need to get out of Germany at the time. There's only one, the Dominican Republic, that said, we will take a few. Nobody else. Everybody else had all kinds of excuses. So the world is getting a little bit better. And when I am able to hand over my experiences to the next generation, and then the next generation, and it tells over and over and over again, I believe maybe very tiny, very small way, the world is going to become a better place. And that is why I believe it is getting better at a snail's pace. Maybe not even at a snail's pace, but it's getting better. And that's why it's so important to be able to hand over the stories to your children, your grandchildren, and so forth.
And we're going to talk about that. I'm glad you have a message of hope and a view of hope, because I know a lot of people may not feel that way.
I was in Warsaw during the uprising in Ghetto Warsaw.
Wow.
This was on Saturday, first day of Pesach. Now, I wasn't in the ghetto. I was on the other side, on the Polish side.
So maybe we can talk to you after as well. Andy.
My friend also, I got cut. And they sent me to Bergen-Belsen. I was 21 months in Bergen-Belsen.
Wow.
And I was liberated in the Hillersleigh by the American Army.
Well, we're honored that you're here with us tonight. Very honored that you're here with us tonight. Andy, this is, as I mentioned, very different. You're used to speaking to students, you're used to speaking at schools, but this was a very different experience for you. Tell us why.
Interestingly enough, you were part of it pretty well from the beginning, because I had the privilege of talking to your youngest son's school, and tomorrow I'll be going to your oldest son's school.
Yeah.
And the feeling right now, tonight, was overwhelming because in my presentations I make the statement that our revenge is that we became grandparents. And for me to have seen all the grandparents and all the grandchildren and have the knowledge that the baton is being passed on, the torch is being carried, and as all the dignitaries said, education, we're participating in that. For me, this is extremely satisfying.
Dan, you are the grandchild. I'm here too, but you're the grandchild who was in the film. It's a big responsibility. It's a big weight. We witnessed really the moment where during this, the interview between Dan and Pinchas was actually an hour and a half long. So you only saw a small portion of it, but it was almost like a therapy session, really, for the two of you. And at the end, he did ask you in this interview to carry on his story. How did this interview change your life?
I don't know that I can say that.
It's okay, they'll do it for him.
I always try and teach you.
Can you hear me now? I mean, there have been a few moments like this. Going to Poland and Germany with my grandfather on the March of Remembrance and Hope, this interview, this evening, each of them kind of takes me to the next level in whatever this is. And it's hard to sort of explain, but each time, you know, we grow closer and my connection to the Holocaust grows stronger and my understanding of my responsibility and my fear for carrying this torch and what that means and what that, you know, will require of me. So it was just sort of another powerful piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Matt, we want to bring you in here. You've been on many projects related to the Holocaust, but this was a really unique one. How did you find this one different for you?
Well, firstly, I thought it was very interesting and different for me and for us, the two of us, to be filming, you know, especially talking about anti-Semitism between survivors and their subsequent generations, because there were children, grandchildren, some great-grandchildren. And there's a fear there because you hear about it often. So it's scary, but, you know, knowing that there's organizations like Wiesenthal and the Neuberger and the Toronto Holocaust Museum and Azrieli, it's also encouraging to understand that we have a responsibility, not just the next generation. Like, my grandparents weren't Holocaust survivors, but filming these and filming all the survivors that I've done and I've done with you over the years, it's my responsibility as well to keep the stories, the history of the Holocaust, what hate can do, but also the lessons, and to commemorate those who have passed, who were murdered. And it's our responsibility as Jews, as non-Jews, as human beings. Mm-hmm. So that was always in my mind, but it was overall just a very powerful experience to just witness survivors with their grandchildren. And as we know, we're entering very, like, in the future, unfortunately, we're going to be in a time where there won't be anyone around who witnessed these atrocities, who survived these atrocities, who fought. So it's more important now than ever.
As you could see at the end of the film, we did lose Georgette, who was in the film, an example of how we are losing so many survivors every year. It is the reality going forward that there won't be first-hand testimony. There will be the dimensions, as you talked about, this 3D sort of virtual testimony, but what do you feel, what is the future of education? I mean, it's your grandson. I know that's what you think, but how will we tell the stories? How will we do International Holocaust Remembrance Day in the years to come when there aren't survivors?
Well, that depends very much on the way things are going. at the moment, what is very concerning to Holocaust survivors is the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of populism, nationalism, all the isms that are against, you know, a real, proper world order. So it's very worrying how it's going to happen. We don't know. But hopefully, with the organizations like the New Toronto Holocaust Museum, the Azrieli, as it was just said now, this will continue, and this possibly will make a difference. I always think in terms of, you know, testimonies. The First World War was an unbelievably horrific war where tens of thousands of human beings were slaughtered on a daily basis. Now, when the war finished, there was this conference, Versailles Conference, and they decided what to do and what to do. But if there was a means in those days for the survivors, the veterans, to be able, today veterans tell their stories just like Holocaust survivors do. If they would tell their stories and it would be propagated, if they could have done it, maybe the Second World War wouldn't have happened. We don't know that. So I think that if we continue with telling the stories of what happens, what is happening, and what shouldn't happen, the world is going to continue. I mean, I believe that the world is going to be a better place. I've told the story so many times, I kind of feel kind of embarrassed almost. You know, I always talk about the little pebble that is lying on the beach and the sea washes over it, and it takes millenniums for it to become a beautiful, soft, warm thing that you may, when you pick it up, you feel wonderful. You get warmth from it. Your heart feels good. Well, maybe the world is going to continue that way, that it's going to take a long time, we don't know, to the end of days, and things will improve. That's my hope.
I hope you're right. Andy, are you worried?
I am not worried because, just like my good friend Pinchas, I'm also an optimist. And I'd like to think that we, together, can change the world one classroom at a time. And this is one big classroom. But we go out and talk to school children. I can't tell you the tremendous satisfaction I had 2 days ago when I went to a Catholic school in Oakville, and in fact, their incredible teacher, John McPhail, just received an award this afternoon because those children wrote 100 letters to politicians. Those children started a campaign that just blew me away. They requested January 27th to be declared Blue Shirt Day. I am passing that request to all of you. Please wear a blue shirt today. And I was the inspiration for that.
Wow.
I wore a blue shirt when I talked to these children, and they had repeated with me what we were talking about, the pledge of never again.
Mm-hmm.
So I am an optimist.
Can I just say how amazing it is every time I hear that a Holocaust survivor is an optimist? Really, I always find it, and as a grandchild though, I've struggled with that, and I talk to my parents about this sometimes, but I feel like I can't be sad because of what they've been through, because they have such a positive attitude. It feels like what they went through was almost, like what we go through is nothing compared to what they went through. How do you feel?
I agree completely. There is no comparison, and that's, I mean, just sitting here listening to these gentlemen speak about speaking in front of rooms, and it's so powerful to listen to them. I can't imagine ever having anything close to that sort of impact. I mean, back to sort of what you asked Pup earlier in terms of the next best thing. As much as I think the grandchildren will help a lot. I think the holographic and AI, remind me what it's called?
Dimensions in
Thank you.
testimony.
Dimensions and testimony. I think that is what's going to be sort of the next most powerful thing, because it's incredible. I mean, the technology is absolutely incredible. I like to think that I'm the first grandchild in the world that's going to be able to go and chat with my grandfather, when the time comes, when I can't see him, in person. And
Are there people who don't know what that is? Dimensions and like, have you? I don't know if you've all seen it, but they recorded Pinchas. You answered probably 3,000 questions.
Very close to, in 3 languages.
Yeah, so they ask him literally thousands of questions so that students will sit in a classroom one day and will speak to Pinchas when he's not with us, but they will speak to him as a hologram and ask him the questions, and he will answer them. It's absolutely amazing. I've seen it. Matt, you can maybe talk about it because you've seen it too.
They actually had it here at the Newburger Holocaust Education Center. It wasn't the hologram version, but I was there. I saw some students in schools come in, and they would, what do you remember about your mother, for example? That's always one. Yeah. And the computer recognizes the words in the question, and Pinchas answers it because they literally asked him thousands of questions. What would this type of a person ask? What would someone who's never heard of the Holocaust ask? What would a Hindu student ask? Or different types of questions from anyone. And so one of the students said, what's a nice memory of your mother? And he says, well, my mother used to sing me a lullaby. And he starts singing a song. And it's like he's right there in front of you. And the full technology, which is only in a few museums so far, but it was in California, it's an actual 3D hologram. It looks like he's kind of sitting in front of you. It's pretty incredible.
It is amazing.
And Pinchas did sing that song. Can you give us a few chords?
He wants you to sing the song that your mother sang.
The song that my mother sang, but it's in Polish.
You can
It's
sing
in
Polish.
Okay, I will.
I knew you would.
Jadą dzieci, jadą drogą, siostrzyczka i brat. I nawidzić się nie mogą, jaki piękny świat. Jadą dzieci, jadą drogą, siostrzyczka i brat. I nawidzić się nie mogą, jaki piękny świat. And the translation the translation is that 2 children, a brother and a sister, are riding in the world. They're riding through the forest or something, and they can't get over how beautiful the world is. And I remember this when I was in my cot, really. Fortunately, and maybe unfortunately, I have a photographic memory, so I remember everything in pictures. And I remember quite clearly my mother, kind of leaning over and singing this lullaby to go to sleep. And for some reason, when I was sitting in that big bubble in California, in Los Angeles, and doing, trying, because I was originally the first one, and they tried all the different things to do it. And I got bored sitting sometimes waiting for the changing of the memory card. So I was kind of, I'm a singer, so I sang to myself. So suddenly Stephen Smith says, oh, wait a minute, you've got to sing us some songs. So of course the first one I did was, the lullaby of my mother.
It's beautiful. We could talk for hours, but I don't think everyone has hours, although we can do another film and then we could do it for hours. But I want to, as we're wrapping up, I want to really ask you, because we've talked about the rise in anti-Semitism, what is your message tonight to everyone on the eve of International Holocaust Remembrance Day? Pinchas.
I'll give the same message to everybody here that I give to the school children when I go to a school and I speak, or the university or wherever I go and I speak, especially to youngsters in schools. And I say to them, do you know the Olympic torch? They say, yes, we all know the Olympic torch. So what is the Olympic torch, I ask? And I was told that the Olympic torch has got one flame, and what it does, it carried through all the countries in the world to create goodwill amongst the competitors, the athletes, that they should compete properly, they shouldn't fight, they shouldn't be angry and all that, and create some kind of goodwill. So I said to them, I've now given you part of me, but I'm going to give you a present. And the present is going to be my torch, the torch that I carry. And the torch that I carry has got many flames. And I'll tell you the most important 5 flames which I think that you should actually think about. No religious discrimination. No racial discrimination. No homophobia. No xenophobia. No hatred. Hatred is the most vicious thing that you can have. It creates vengeance and so forth, so on. But I want you to take and hand it over to your families. Hand it over to everybody that you know. Take those flames and let the world loves light. Let the world be lit up with all those words that I give you. And as far as I'm concerned, if we could achieve that we should not only tolerate other human beings, it doesn't matter from whatever they are, whether they are colored, whether they are Christian, whether they are Jewish, whether they are Muslim, it doesn't really matter. But we should accept them as we accept ourselves. Please remember, accept everybody. And that is my belief and my what you've asked. What do I give to the future?
That was my grandmother's one message too, was tolerance. Andy?
I will be a few different topics. Number one, this upcoming museum is going to be incredible. It's modern technology. It will combine everything that we are capable of doing today. But the old building is still standing. And in the old building, we have a gallery, a portrait gallery, in which all the survivor speakers, present and past, are there. On this portrait gallery, their life story is shown. Now, I became a survivor speaker only after my incredible mother passed away. And my presentation is titled "The Ring of Love," and I am wearing this ring of love. Her portrait in the old building says, amongst other things, you can't live with hatred in your heart all the time. We have the same message. You can't hate. You got to accept people. Not necessarily love them, because not everybody is lovable, but don't hate them.
A final message, Dan, Matthew, a final message tonight?
I don't know if I could follow that, but everything they said, we have to. I'm very excited for the Toronto Holocaust Museum. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be world class, and I'm honored to be a part of the creation of some of the filming for that. So I'm telling everyone you should definitely come to see it when it opens.
And part of the future of Holocaust education is another video we're working on for Friends of Simon Wiesenthal, where we're going to follow the Tour for Humanity. So
the other day I had the privilege of seeing it firsthand, the Tour of Humanity, which is they have 2 buses that travel across Canada to all different types of communities. And the bus literally is like a transformer, and it opens up into this classroom, and they have amazing educators. And it was just interesting. We were at King City Public School, and the educator said, "How many of you have never heard of the word anti-Semitism?" And about 10 kids put up their hand, honestly. But they were very engaged. They were very excited. So that's another great thing that this community is doing. So,
Dan?
I actually just want to thank all these foundations, the Israeli Foundation, the Shoah Foundation, FSWC, all the testimony that you guys have captured in print, in film, audiovisual, whatever. It's not just an amazing gift to the world to tell the story, but it's an incredible gift to us who have to continue telling this story. I think there's no way I'll ever be able to absorb everything there is to absorb. And I feel really lucky that I have all of these resources forever that I can go back to and to help me do what I need to do.
Yeah, modern technology. It's amazing. Thank you all so much, really, for being on this panel, for being in the film, for taking part in this project. We're so grateful that you took part in this. I wish we had more time, but I want to thank you all for coming tonight and being part of this.
I didn't hear what you said.
I said thank you.
Oh,
I thanked you. We're going to stay here so that we don't make a scene, but I'd like to call up Jody Spiegel, Director, Holocaust Survivor Memoirs Program from the Azrieli Foundation for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I can't believe I have to follow this, so please bear with me. This was incredible. I'm going to thank everybody in a moment, but I actually want to say that so since 2005, for 18 years, we've been collecting the memoirs written by Holocaust survivors who came to Canada after the war. And we work to make these books free to schools across the country. We've published 122 survivor stories. But what we found was many of these survivors actually began writing for their children. Actually, it was once they had grandchildren that they began writing. And it was only in those moments, often later in life, that they took the time to say, whoa, I need to leave something behind. I need to do something to make sure that they know what we went through. So a project like this also, I have to just, again, a round of applause. It's absolutely gorgeous. Really. I want to thank Michael for inviting us as partners tonight and the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for this beautiful event. To Dara and the Toronto Holocaust Museum, always outstanding partners, and we're really excited to be the lead donor for the upcoming museum this spring. Thank you to Mayor Tory, your beautiful words and always standing with us. We see that, and we appreciate that. Matthew, Naomi, Dan, Andy, Pinchas, thank you. Tonight we saw how important sharing stories in different ways is. And we know people engage in stories in different ways, whether it's through books, testimony, film, photo. And for us at the Azrieli Foundation, our next step is audiobooks. And so in honor of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I'm delighted to announce that we're partnering with Penguin Random House Canada to bring the individual stories of 5 Holocaust survivors to audiobook form. Pinchas Gutter, Ellie Gotts, Judy Cohen, Marguerite Kudis, and Mort Schnitzer's memoirs are now available. These are the only collection of audiobooks narrated by a Holocaust survivor themselves. Since our mandate is about education, we are making these audiobooks available free until February 6th, because then Penguin has their own mandate. And they're available wherever you would find audiobooks and podcasts. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for taking the time to learn, and please continue to learn. Have a good night. Thank you.